We've talked about how important the first 10 pages of your novel are, and today I'm going to talk about how important the first 3 pages are. So we're getting even smaller, and why these first pages are so crucial to your story. So let's get started.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante. I am a women's fiction author, and I'm here on Fridays to give you a few writing tips and to talk about writing, which is my favorite thing to talk about. So today, let's talk about those first 3 pages. So I did make a video in the past about the first 10 pages, and today we're going to move it down to just 3 pages, okay? All right, so why 3 pages? Well, years ago, Romance Writers of America had what they called the Romance Writers Report, which was a newsletter, not a little newsletter, actually a nice sized newsletter. And there was a column for a while called, I think it was called the first 3 pages. And it was, somebody would submit, some brave soul would submit a sample of their writing, the first 3 pages. And then an editor would actually look through it and critique it. And then you could read like what the editor said. And it was very interesting. But what it showed me was, how important those first 3 pages are, because the editor makes so many decisions based on what those first 3 pages say. And so I learned quickly from reading those that it was probably one of the most helpful columns that they had, because you could see the way that the editors think, right? What is it that they're looking for? What kind of things are they saying? A lot of times they would mention the strengths and weaknesses of the piece. They would also talk about, whether they would ask for more, why and why not. So again, it was very, very interesting, and it showed me how important those first 3 pages can be when you're pitching a story to an editor or publishing house. So what were some of the things that the editors were looking at in this column? So like, for example, one time there was an editor who mentioned that the heroine, and of course this is romance books, right? Because it's romance writers. And so the heroine was too weak. And why was she too weak? Because she just didn't seem like she was standing up to, there was a conflict and she wasn't standing up to the hero at the time. Now this is the first 3 pages. So it made me question, well, what is that? She's making a decision that this heroine is weak because she's got a problem. So, but we're also told, right, that that we want to open with a problem. And well, if there's a problem, sometimes the character is going to seem maybe like they're stressed, they're weak, there's an unexpected problem. What do they do? So what do you do, right? How do you fix that problem? And so it made me question, like, okay, how do I need to not show my female character being weak at the beginning? That's not what you want to do, by the way. But at the time, that's one of my questions were, how then do I present my heroine at the very beginning, those first 3 pages? But the point here is that, right, that the editor made a snap judgment about this heroine based on how she reacted in these first 3 pages. And so the whole point wasn't whether this heroine was weak or not. The point was that if the character seems to have a personality flaw that the editor is going to pick out, we want to make sure that we don't have that, or that we explain it, right? So if she seems weak, why? What's going on here? You don't want to present your character in a negative way, because your reader, right, your editor in this example, doesn't know if this is the way that this character is going to behave for the rest of the novel, or if it's just something because of the event that's happening. So you want to say, like, this is unusual for her, but right now, because of the shock, this is the way she's acting, right? So you want to explain why your character is acting a certain way, so that the reader doesn't assume something that isn't true for the rest of the novel. And the editor may at this point decide, no, I don't want to see anymore because I just didn't connect with this character. I didn't like the way the character behaved in this situation. So so again, it's just showing how you want this character to reflect how they're going to be for the rest of your story, right? So you don't want the character to be different than how she's going to be or he's going to be later on. You want it to be an example of how the character actually is throughout the whole story. The other thing that you can learn from, that I learned and that hopefully I'm sharing with you is that you want to think like an editor, right? When you're writing these first 3 pages and you're revising them and you're getting them ready to send out, you want to think like an editor. The editor is always thinking of the audience. How is the audience going to view this character? How is the audience going to view this situation? Is this grabbing them? Is this hooking them? Is this interesting them? So think like an editor. Think about the audience. How is the audience going to, how are the readers going to react to this story and the way you opened the story? So, again, if you're thinking like a reader, you're thinking about the audience. So what do you include in these pages? So let's I guess take a step back, right? Then what do we want these first 3 pages to look like? You want to ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish with this opening scene, right? So what do I want so I'm thinking of the reader, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to tell the reader about this story, the characters, and what's happening with this opening? So there's a lot of things you want to do in the opening, right? You want to hook the reader. You want to introduce your characters. You want to, in fact, actually, let me read this, because in that last video that I made, and it was last February of 2023. So if you want to go back and take a look at this video, I can even link it below. What the things that I mentioned for the first 10 pages is going to be the same, but in a condensed way in the first 3 pages. Okay, so one of the things I said is you want to reveal your voice and the tone of the story. You want, what is this going to be? A very intense story? Is it going to be a slow starting story? Is it going to be, romantic? Is it going to be scary? What is the tone of this story? You want to show that in those first 3 pages as well, right, as the first 10 pages. The other thing that I wrote down is that you want to, of course, present the setting of the story. Where is this happening? Give us a little clue. It doesn't, immediately the character wants to know where we're at. I mean, the reader wants to know where we're at, where the character is at. So you want to share that within those first 3 pages. You also want to show the reader what the character wants. Now, it might not be, the first 3 pages are hard, right? Within the first 10 pages, you definitely want to show what is this character wants. What is the goal here, this character's goal? The first 3 pages, sometimes it's hard because you are setting the scene. You might be using a little bit more description. You might, depending on the type of story you're writing, it might not be super clear what the character wants yet, but you want to have maybe some kind of hint, right? So maybe he's going to work. He doesn't seem like he's all that excited about work. He wishes that he had made a different decision. Then you don't really know exactly what the goal is going to be yet, but you do want to show that there's something going on, right? There's something that is not quite right that is going to lead the character to go on a journey to change his life in some way. So the first 3 pages should at least give us a little hint of what the character wants, or at least what he doesn't want if he doesn't want what he currently has. The fourth thing that I had in my previous video was that you want to show what's at stake for the character. So if the character wants something but he doesn't get what he wants, what's at stake? What's it going to cost him? Why is it important for this character to get whatever it is that he needs, right? If he needs a new job, if he needs to get a divorce, if he needs just some food, whatever he needs, right? What's at stake here if he doesn't get what he wants? Because it's going to become important. It's going to be why the reader wants to read a little bit more, like, okay, well, if he doesn't get this could happen. So I want to see if he gets it, because I want to see what happens if he doesn't get it, right? So it helps the reader to get hooked into your story. That's just creating a little bit of that hook. And then the other thing that, again, I shared in my previous video was that you're introducing kind of the theme. What is the deeper story here? Is it a story just about somebody who's looking for a job, or is it a story about someone who, whatever, something else is happening, something deeper, right? Some kind of emotional, has lost, his children for some reason, doesn't have a connection to his children, and this is his only job. In fact, I mean, there's so many movies and so many books that have a theme like that. We sometimes read and watch the rest of the book to see, well, not only is he going to get his job, but is he going to, fix this this relationship issue, this inability to connect with other people during the course of him finding another job. So there's a deeper theme in your story. What is that? And that we should get a little clue within those first 3 pages. Again, not as much as within the first 10. Within the first 10, we definitely want to get an idea of the theme of this story. But within the first 3, we might get just a little hint of what's going on. You might see a little bit of insecurity, or you might see that this person is all alone because his family's not there. We might not know really why, but we might know that, okay, there's something off here that isn't the way it should be for this character, because he has some type of flaw that it is going to be part of the theme of this story. Okay, so we want to have a little bit of clue. So if you can have a little bit of that within those first 3 pages, it's going to draw your reader in much more. But there's one thing that draws readers in more than anything else. Okay, so here's the secret to how to draw your reader in and really get them attached within those first 3 pages. Can you guess what that is? Okay, if you said emotion, you're right. Okay, emotion is what is going to bring us in. So we want to feel something when we're reading those first 3 pages. We want a connection to that character. This is why that example where the editor didn't care for the heroine so much because she thought she was weak, there was no connection there. The editor was not connecting to that heroine because maybe the romance line that she was acquiring books for really liked super strong heroines, and this heroine was not showing that, right? So we want that emotion. We want somebody to connect with the character and feel something within those first 3 pages. But great writing is super important, of course. We want to have beautiful writing. We want to have the craft down, but we also want to have that emotion come through within those first 3 pages. And let me give you an example. Now, this is not a fiction book, but it is a really good book that I like a lot. And it's a book by Victor Villaseñor called Burro Genius. And it's sort of a memoir in a way. But I really liked the way that at the very beginning, he actually starts with dialogue. And he is himself, right? Because again, it's a memoir. But the character is going to a conference for teachers. I think it was the CATE conference. Yes, and it's I forget what it stands for. It's California something teachers, right? And so he goes to this conference. I think it was English teachers. And one of the things that he had the hardest time with when he was a student was English. First of all, English was not his first language. And then also he felt like he just wasn't good at it, and he was belittled by teachers. So he really didn't have a huge love for English teachers. And here he was sharing his book and talking at a conference to English teachers. So it starts with he's there, he's very excited, he's kind of nervous, but then the person who was supposed to deliver the keynote doesn't show up. And so the event coordinators are desperate, trying to find somebody to stand in. And they're like, oh, well, who could do it? Nobody really is saying, I'll do it. They're just kind of stepping back, and so finally he says, I'll do it. And they look at him and they're like, you're a brand new writer. You don't, you're not really dressed professionally. He had like a cowboy hat on, and they're like, I don't know if we want you, right? They didn't say it straight out, but they were kind of thinking, well, is there anybody else, that has more experience? You're a new author. You're going to be the keynote. Do you know what you're going to say? So they weren't very encouraging. And so this kind of starts, the dialogue starts very early. It explains all this, but then the dialogue starts. And I really liked it because you could see like the conference chair and his publicist, they were a bit condescending. And so the dialogue says, she's like, okay, finally she's decided that she's going to accept him. And she says, all right, then we'll go with this writer. But do we have anything on him, and who's going to introduce him? And this lady says, I can do it. I can do that, says Sandy, smiling at me. I just read his bio and it has legs. Really? Said Karen, sounding impressed. Yes. All right, then he's our man of the hour. Then I couldn't believe it. Karen now turned to me with a big smile as if I'd really been her first choice all along and said, how are you feeling? Is there anything I can do for you? I felt like saying, no thanks, ma'am. You've already kicked the crap out of me enough, but I didn't. And so I loved just that interaction. You could see, it starts immediately. You could see some action. You hear the tone. You get all of the feeling of his nervousness and his reaction and the way that he responds to things, right? And for what, I'm not going to read any more of that, but you can feel like that the way he feels, that he's like this little fish in this big pond with these publishing people, these other professional writers, these teachers that he didn't really care for when he was younger, and then now he's got to stand up here and deliver this keynote, and he's super nervous to all these people that are supposedly know more than he does. So I really liked it. I liked the way he engaged with other people. I liked the way that he introduced all the kind of his stress and the conflict here, at least the conflict of the beginning. And we feel like the emotion, we feel his anxiety, we feel the way that, this person is, who has not, at some point, like in school, not been the first person chosen, right? You go for a game, you're the last kid chosen. Well, this is like him, right? He's like the only option here. And, you're engaging in this story and his heart and the emotion, and this draws you in because now you want to see, well, how is he going to do this? Is he going to be able to pull this off? And what are, how are the other people going to react to him? So it doesn't have to be, this is not a major conflict, right? It's not super big conflict, but it's interesting enough to get us to start reading. And within those first 3 pages, we know who he is, what the problem is. We're not sure how he's going to resolve it. We have the emotion and the anxiety and the fear and the all of this all at once within these first 3 pages. Now the emotion helps us to care about the character, right? So we care about him because we kind of feel bad that he's being treated this way. First of all, he volunteers and they still don't make him feel comfortable or welcomed. So we feel bad for the character. We understand how he feels, and we want to see how this gets resolved. So within those first 3 pages, then your job is to capture the reader's interest and then capture the reader's heart. And if you do that within those first 3 pages, you've got them hooked and they will continue to read. Then you have to give them a little more within those first 10 pages for them to continue to read and want to read more. So hopefully this helps and it gives you an idea of how important those first 3 pages are. And it encourages you to spend time writing and rewriting those first 3 pages so that you have all of those elements of character, tone, conflict, and emotion and heart. Okay, so I hope this has helped, and if it has, please hit the like and the share button, and I will see you again next week.